The war between the Galactic Council and the Kreth Dominion had lasted 17 years. 17 years of burning worlds, dying soldiers, and broken families scattered across 100 star systems. The great powers of the galaxy were tired. They were bleeding money, losing people, and running out of hope. But neither side would admit defeat. Neither side would bend. Then humanity made an offer. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 40 years ago. To the ancient species of the Council, 40 years was nothing. It was a blink. The Cytheri Collective had ruled their corner of space for 12,000 years. The Vorn Imperium had conquered and lost empires before humans had learned to write. To these old powers, humanity was like a child who had just learned to walk trying to give advice to tired old men, but the humans did not see it that way. They saw two sides destroying each other. They saw billions dying for pride and territory, and they believed they could help. Ambassador Elena Vasquez was chosen to lead the human delegation. She was 52 years old, with gray streaks in her dark hair and calm brown eyes that had seen both war and peace. She had spent her whole career building bridges between enemies. She believed, truly believed, that any conflict could be solved with enough patience and understanding. Her team had worked for 8 months preparing their proposal. They had studied the history of the war. They had learned the grievances of both sides. They had mapped out territorial disputes, calculated fair reparations, and designed neutral trade routes that would benefit everyone. It was good work, careful work, the kind of work that could actually end a war. The Nexus Station hung in neutral space, a massive structure of metal and light where the galaxy's powers came to talk. Ambassador Vasquez and her delegation arrived in a small diplomatic ship, nothing fancy, nothing threatening. They were escorted to the Grand Chamber, where representatives from every council species waited. High Counselor Tethfon of the Cythari Collective sat at the center of the curved table. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 eyes that blinked in pairs. His expression showed polite boredom, like a teacher waiting for a slow student to finish speaking. Around him sat the other council members, each one ancient, each one powerful, each one looking at the humans with the same patient condescension. The Kreth ambassador was there too, sitting apart from the council. His species was reptilian, with dark green scales and sharp teeth that showed when he smiled. He did not smile at the humans. He barely looked at them at all. Ambassador Vasquez took her place at the speaking platform. She straightened her notes, took a breath, and began. She spoke clearly and carefully. She explained humanity's position as a neutral party. She outlined the key points of the proposed peace framework. She talked about territorial compromises, about shared resources, about ways to address the grievances that had started the war in the first place. Her voice was steady and confident. She had given many speeches in her career, and this was one of the best. She was 3 minutes into her presentation when High Counselor Tethfon raised his hand. Ambassador Vasquez stopped, expecting a question about her proposal. Instead, Tethfon looked around at his fellow council members with an amused expression. His 4 eyes crinkled with what humans would recognize as a smile. "Must ask," he said, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. "Did the young species bring refreshments? I find myself quite thirsty." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not all of the delegates laughed, but enough did. The sound echoed off the high walls, filling the space with mockery. Ambassador Vasquez felt her face grow warm, but she kept her composure. She had dealt with difficult people before. She continued her presentation, but the interruptions kept coming. Counselor Rethma of the Vorn Imperium yawned loudly and made a show of checking his personal device. The Kreth ambassador examined his claws, picking at them like a bored child. When Vasquez mentioned the trade corridor proposal, someone in the back made a comment about humans, barely knowing how to navigate their own solar system. More laughter. Ambassador Vasquez pushed through. She finished her presentation with the same steady voice she had started with, though her hands had begun to shake slightly behind the podium. When she was done, she stood in silence, waiting for a response. The Secretary General of the Council, a elderly Morath with wrinkled gray skin and tired eyes, looked at the human proposal on his datapad. He scrolled through it for exactly 4 seconds. Then he set it down. "How charmingly naive," he said. "The young species has given us a school project. How sweet." The chamber erupted in laughter again. Ambassador Vasquez did not laugh. She did not speak. She simply stood there, her dark eyes moving slowly across the faces of every delegate in the room. Then Counselor Rethma stood up. He was large for his species, with ceremonial armor that gleamed under the chamber lights. He walked toward the human delegation with a friendly smile that did not reach his eyes. Perhaps, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear, the humans could still be useful during our negotiations. Someone needs to fetch documents and prepare meals for the real diplomats. Neutral servants? Yes? Very appropriate. The laughter this time was the loudest yet. Ambassador Vasquez closed her datapad. The soft click was somehow audible even over the fading laughter. She gathered her notes with careful, deliberate movements. Her delegation, 5 humans who had worked so hard on this proposal, stood and collected their things as well. The chamber grew quiet. The delegates watched, some still smiling, some looking confused. Ambassador Vasquez looked at High Counselor Tethfon. Her voice was calm and clear when she spoke. "We withdraw our offer." 4 words. Simple words. But something in the way she said them made several delegates stop smiling. Tethfon waved a dismissive hand. "Very well, very well. Run along, little ones. The adults have work to do." Ambassador Vasquez turned and walked toward the exit. Her delegation followed in perfect silence. Their footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet chamber. At the door, Vasquez paused. She did not turn around. She did not raise her voice. She simply spoke, and somehow every being in that chamber heard her clearly. "You will remember this day," she said, "and you will regret it." Then she was gone. The council laughed again. But it was weaker this time, uncertain. A few of the older delegates exchanged glances, but said nothing. 3 days later, the Kreth Dominion launched their largest military offensive in 5 years. 2 council worlds fell in the first week. The death toll reached 9 million before the month was over, and humanity was silent. 6 months passed after the humans left the Nexus Station. 6 months of blood and fire and death. The Kreth Dominion had developed something terrible. Their scientists had created a biological weapon, a sickness that attacked the nervous systems of most council species. The Scytheri, the Vorn, the Morith, and a dozen others all had similar biology. They all used silicon-based neural pathways to think and feel and move. The Kreth weapon targeted exactly that. The first outbreak happened on a Scythari colony world called Vethana Prime. One morning, the planet went silent. Communication satellites stopped receiving signals. Ships in orbit reported no response from the surface. When rescue teams finally landed, they found 8 million people lying still in their homes. Their eyes open, their bodies alive, but their minds gone. The weapon spread. Colony after colony fell silent. The Scytheri Collective lost 4 of their most important worlds in 2 months. The Vorn Imperium lost their military command center when the weapon was released during a strategic meeting. 18 of their highest generals died in their chairs, their thoughts simply stopping like candles. Blown out by wind, panic spread faster than the weapon itself. High Counselor Tethfon watched his people die and felt fear for the first time in his long life. The Scytheri were among the oldest species in the galaxy. They had survived wars, plagues, and natural disasters that had killed entire civilizations. But this weapon was different. This weapon was designed specifically to kill them. The Council's scientists worked without sleep. They made progress, small steps toward understanding the weapon and maybe finding a cure. But they needed more resources. They needed samples from different victims. They needed data and equipment and expertise they did not have. Someone on the Scientific Council suggested reaching out to humanity. At first, the idea was dismissed. Humanity was young. Humanity was primitive. What could they possibly offer? But then reports came in. Human medical ships had been spotted near the combat zones. Human scientists had been quietly studying the weapon from samples recovered from refugee ships. And according to intelligence sources, they had made progress. Real progress. The Council decided to ask for help. They sent formal diplomatic messages to Earth. They used the proper channels, the correct protocols, all the official ways that galactic powers communicate with each other. They explained the situation. They requested assistance. They waited for a response. The response came quickly. It was an automated message. United Earth's government is not accepting diplomatic communications from the Galactic Council at this time. High Counselor Tethfin read the message 3 times. He could not believe it. He had expected negotiation, demands, perhaps even gloating. He had not expected to be ignored completely. He tried again. He sent personal messages, priority communications, emergency signals. He used every method available to him. The responses were always the same. Automated, impersonal, final. Your request has been noted. Your message has been received. The United Earth government is not accepting diplomatic communications from the Galactic Council at this time. Days turned into weeks. The weapon kept spreading. Council worlds kept falling. And humanity remained silent, but they were not inactive. Intelligence reports painted a strange picture. Human ships were everywhere along the borders of the war zone. Massive cargo vessels, hospital ships, transport carriers. They were not fighting. They were not taking sides. They were simply there. Moving through the darkness of space on missions, the Council did not understand. Then the refugee reports started coming in. Sathari transport fleeing a dying colony encountered a human hospital ship near the Korath Nebula. The humans took in every refugee without asking questions. They fed them, treated their injuries, and gave them safe passage to neutral space. They asked for nothing in return. A Vorn military ship, damaged and drifting, sent out distress signals that were answered by a human cargo vessel. The humans provided emergency repairs, medical supplies, and coordinates to the nearest safe port. When the Vorn captain tried to pay them, the humans refused. Kreth civilians, fleeing their own government's brutal policies, found sanctuary on human stations. Former enemies shared food and shelter under human protection. Exhausted and grateful to fight, humanity was helping everyone. Everyone except the Council itself. High Counselor Tethfon requested a private audience with the humans. He recorded a personal message, speaking directly to the camera with none of his usual political masks. He admitted that the Council had been wrong to dismiss humanity. He acknowledged that they needed help. He asked as clearly as he could for the humans to reconsider their silence. He waited 2 weeks for a response. When it finally came, it was a single sentence. Your request has been noted. Tethfon stood alone in his office, reading that message over and over. His hands trembled. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of deep distress in his species. He had ruled the Sathari Collective for over 200 years. He had negotiated with enemies, crushed rebellions, and guided his people through disasters that would have destroyed lesser civilizations, but he had never felt so helpless. He thought about the day the humans had left the Nexus station. He remembered the laughter. He remembered asking if they had brought refreshments. He remembered the way Ambassador Vasquez had looked at him before she walked out the door. You will remember this day, she had said, and you will regret it, he remembered. And he regretted, but regret would not cure his dying people. Regret would not stop the weapon. Regret would not bring back the billions already lost. The Council held emergency meetings. They argued and blamed each other and searched desperately for solutions. Some suggested attacking humanity, forcing them to share their medical research. Others pointed out that humanity had not actually done anything wrong. They were helping refugees. They were treating the wounded. They were doing more good than the Council itself. They just would not help the Council. And that was when the terrible truth became clear. Humanity was not being cruel. They were not seeking revenge. They were simply treating the Council exactly as the Council had treated them. They were ignoring them to the ancient powers of the galaxy. who had always been the center of everything, who had always been the ones deciding who mattered and who did not. This was worse than war. This was worse than hatred. This was indifference. And they had absolutely no idea how to fight it. Counselor Rethma of the Vorn. Imperium was dying. His personal transport ship drifted through the darkness near the Korath Nebula, its engines failing, its life support system slowly shutting down. The crew around him lay motionless in their seats, their eyes open but empty. The Kreth bioweapon had found them somehow. Perhaps a contaminated supply shipment. Perhaps a saboteur. It did not matter now. Rethma could feel the weapon working inside his own body. His thoughts were becoming slow and foggy. His vision blurred at the edges. He had maybe 6 hours before he ended up like his crew, alive but gone. His ship's sensors showed only one facility within range, a human medical station. Floating in the neutral zone like a small moon of metal and light, Rethma stared at the readings for a long time. He remembered standing in the council chamber, suggesting that humans could serve as waitstaff during negotiations. He remembered the laughter. He remembered the look on Ambassador Vasquez's face. But he did not want to die. He transmitted his credentials to the human station. His voice was weak, but still carried the authority of his position.
This is Counselor Rethma of the Vorn Imperium.
My ship is disabled, and my crew is infected with the Kreth bioweapon. I require immediate medical assistance. The response came quickly. A human voice, calm and professional. We have received your transmission. Please clarify. Are you a civilian seeking humanitarian aid, or are you a representative of the Galactic Council? Rethma blinked. The question seemed strange. What difference did it make? I am Counselor Rethma, he repeated. I am a senior member of the Galactic Council. I demand immediate assistance under interstellar emergency protocols. There was a pause. Then the human voice returned, still calm, still professional. We apologize for any confusion. Council representatives are not recognized at this facility. However, we would be happy to receive any civilian refugees aboard your vessel. Please advise. Rethma felt the words hit him like a physical blow. His mind, already slowed by the weapon, struggled to understand. What do you mean, not recognized? I am a counselor. I have authority. I have, sir. This facility provides humanitarian aid to civilians affected by the ongoing conflict. We do not engage with political or military representatives of any government. If there are civilians aboard your vessel who wish to seek refuge, please have them signal us directly. Rethma looked around at his dying crew, at his own trembling hands, at the darkness creeping into the edges of his vision. There are no civilians, he said slowly. Just me and my crew. We are all dying. You have a cure. You must help us. We're happy to provide assistance to any civilian refugees. Do you have any civilians aboard? The question hung in the air. Rethma understood now. The humans were not refusing to help out of cruelty. They were following rules, principles they had set for themselves. They would help anyone who came to them as a person in need. But they would not help the Council. Not as an institution. Not as a power. He had two choices. He could die with his title and his pride. Or he could live as something he had never been in his long life. A nobody. His hands moved slowly, clumsily as he removed the insignia of his office from his ceremonial armor. The metal symbols clattered to the floor. He pulled off his rank markers, his medals, everything that showed who and what he was. I am. He had to stop and breathe. The weapon was making it hard to speak. I am a merchant, a simple merchant. My ship is damaged. My crew is sick. Please, please help us. Another pause. Then the human voice returned, and somehow it sounded warmer. Merchant vessel, we are dispatching a medical shuttle to your location. Please remain calm. Help is on the way. 20 minutes later, human doctors in protective suits boarded Rethma's ship. They moved quickly and efficiently, checking each crew member, administering injections, setting up portable life support systems. One of them, a young woman with dark skin and kind eyes, knelt beside Rethma and pressed an injector to his neck. This will stop the progression, she said. You'll feel better soon. You're safe now? Rethma wanted to thank her. He wanted to ask questions, but the injection made him sleepy, and darkness took him before he could speak. He woke up in a clean white room. Medical equipment hummed softly around him. His mind was clear, clearer than it had been in days. He sat up slowly and looked at his hands. They were steady. The fog was gone. A human doctor entered, an older man with gray hair and a gentle smile. Good, you're awake. How do you feel? Better, Rethma said. Much better. The weapon? We developed a treatment several months ago. It's not a complete cure yet, but it stops the progression and reverses most of the damage. Your crew is recovering in another ward. Everyone should make a full recovery. Rethma stared at the doctor. Several months ago, the humans had found a treatment several months ago. While the council was begging for help, while billions were dying, the humans had already solved the problem. Why? Rethma asked. Why did you not share this with the council? The doctor's smile faded slightly. He looked at Rethma for a long moment. That's above my pay grade, he said finally. I'm just a doctor. I help people who need help. That's all I know how to do. He left Rethma alone with his thoughts. Over the next few days, Rethma watched the humans work. He saw them treating patients from every species, every faction. Sathari refugees slept in beds next to Voran soldiers. Kreth civilians shared meals with council bureaucrats. Everyone was equal here. Everyone was just a person who needed help. No one asked about politics. No one asked about the war. The humans simply helped and helped and helped. When Rethma was healthy enough to leave, they gave him simple clothes, a good meal, and transport to a neutral port. No payment was requested. No promises were demanded. They simply wished him well and sent him on his way. He returned to the council a different being. He stood before the assembly, still wearing the simple clothes the humans had given him. His insignia was gone. His medals were gone. He looked like a common person, not a powerful counselor. We treated them as children, he said. His voice was quiet but carried through the silent chamber. We laughed at them. We insulted them. We suggested they serve us food and fetch our documents. He paused, remembering the human doctor's gentle smile. We were wrong. They are not children. They are not weak. They are patient. And there is a difference between a species that cannot help you and a species that chooses not to. He looked at High Counselor Tethfon. They have the cure. They have had it for months. They have been saving our people, one refugee at a time, asking nothing in return. And they will not help us until we give them a reason to believe we deserve it. The chamber was silent. For the first time in the history of the Galactic Council, Ellen laughed. High Counselor Tethfon made a decision that shocked everyone who knew him. He would go to Earth himself, not with a fleet of warships, not with a delegation of diplomats, not with gifts or threats or political maneuvering. He would go alone, with only a single aide to help with translation. And he would ask the humans for forgiveness. His advisors called it madness. The Sathari Collective had never sent their highest leader to beg from a younger species. It would make them look weak. It would destroy their reputation among the other council powers. Tethfon listened to their objections. Then he looked at the latest casualty reports. 14 million more dead in the past month. Entire colonies silent. Children who would never grow up. Families who would never see each other again. A reputation, he said quietly, is already destroyed. We destroyed it ourselves when we laughed at the only people who wanted to help us. He left that night. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks. Tethfon spent most of it alone in his small cabin, thinking about the past and the future. He was over 300 years old. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had negotiated treaties that shaped the galaxy for centuries. But he had never done anything like this. His ship arrived at Earth's moon and requested permission to approach the planet. The response was the same automated message the Council had received for months. United Earth Government is not accepting diplomatic communications from the Galactic Council at this time. Tethfon did not leave. He sent another message, this time not as High Counselor, but as himself. My name is Tethvon. I was wrong about your people. I am here to admit that, in person, to whoever will listen. I will wait as long as necessary. He waited. Days passed. His aide grew restless, pacing the small ship, checking the communication systems again and again. But Tethvon sat by the window, watching the blue and green planet below, and waited. 1 week passed. Then 2, then 3. Finally, a message came. Not automated. A real human voice. High Counselor Tethvon, your request for a meeting has been approved. You will be transported to Geneva, Earth, tomorrow at 0900 local time. You may bring one aid. No weapons. No recording devices. Do you accept these terms? Tethvon felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. Accept, he said. The next morning, a human shuttle arrived to bring him to the surface. The pilot was a young man who said nothing during the flight. Tethvon watched through the window as Earth grew larger and larger, its blue oceans and white clouds filling his vision. It was beautiful. He had never noticed before. Geneva was a city built between mountains and a great lake. The meeting was held in a small conference room in an ordinary building, nothing like the grand chambers of the Nexus station. The chairs were simple. The table was plain wood. The windows showed a view of snow-capped mountains. There were 5 humans in the room. 4 of them were government officials, their faces neutral and unreadable. The 5th was Ambassador Elena Vasquez. She was no longer an ambassador. Tethvon's intelligence reports said she had resigned after the disaster at the Nexus station. But she was here now, sitting slightly apart from the others. Her dark eyes watching him with an expression he could not read. Tet had prepared a speech. He had written it himself, spending hours choosing each word. It was full of diplomatic language, careful phrases, political positioning. He forgot all of it the moment he sat down. We were fools, he said instead. His voice sounded strange in his own ears, raw and honest, in a way he had not allowed himself to be in centuries. We dismissed your wisdom because you were new to the stars. We mocked your compassion because we thought it was weakness. We insulted your ambassador and drove away the only people who genuinely wanted peace. The humans watched him in silence. I am not here to demand anything. I am not here to negotiate. I am here to ask for your help. No, shook his head. I am here to beg for your help. Not for the council. Not for our governments or our politics. For the billions of ordinary people who are dying while we pretend we know how to end this war. The Secretary General of the United Earth Government, a woman with silver hair and sharp blue eyes, leaned forward. Why should we believe the council's intentions have changed? It was a fair question. Tethvon had no good answer. He only had the truth. You should not believe it, he admitted. We have given you no reason for trust. We laughed at you. We dismissed you. We treated you like children playing at adult games. He spread his hands, a gesture of complete openness. You would be right to turn us away. You would be right to let us destroy ourselves. Perhaps we deserve it. He looked at the humans, one by one, until his eyes rested on Ambassador Vasquez. But I have seen what your people do, he continued. Your ships are out there right now, saving refugees, treating the wounded, feeding the hungry. You help Sithari and Vorn and Kreth alike. You ask for nothing in return. You could have let the galaxy burn. Instead, you chose to save whoever you could reach. His voice cracked slightly. He did not try to hide it. Whatever we are, whatever we have done, we are not worth saving. I know that. But the civilians your people have already shown mercy to? The children in refugee camps? The families fleeing war zones? They deserve a galaxy that is no longer at war. They deserve peace. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Ambassador Vasquez spoke. Not as a translator, not as a diplomat, but as a citizen. I told the council they would regret their arrogance, she said quietly. I take no pleasure in being right. She looked at the Secretary General, then back at Tethvon. I became a diplomat because I believed in peace. I still believe in peace. When I walked out of that chamber, I was angry. I am still angry, if I am honest. But anger is not the same as giving up. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the mountains. My grandmother survived a war on Earth, she said. She told me something I never forgot. She said that peace is not something you achieve and then you are done. Peace is something you choose every day, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. She turned to face Tethfon. You humiliated me in front of the entire galaxy. You treated my life's work as a joke. You made me doubt myself for the first time in 30 years. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were bright. And now you come here asking for help. Tethfon bowed his head. I did those things. I cannot undo them. I can only tell you that I was wrong and that I am sorry. Ambassador Vasquez was silent for a long moment. Then she looked at the Secretary General. We should help them, she said. Not because they deserve it. Not because they have earned it. But because that is who we are. That is who I want us to be. The Secretary General studied Tethfon with those sharp blue eyes. We will discuss this, she said finally. You will have our answer within 1 week. It was not a yes. But it was not a no. For the first time in months, Tethfon allowed himself to hope. 6 months after High Counselor Tethfon's visit to Earth, humanity returned to the Nexus Station. The station had changed since the humans had last walked its corridors. War damage marked the outer hull. The grand hallways were less crowded, the shops and restaurants half empty. The species of the galaxy were tired and broken, worn down by years of fighting that seemed to have no end. But today, the Grand Chamber was full. Every council species had sent representatives. The Sithari Collective, the Vorn Imperium, the Morith Federation, and a dozen others filled the curved benches. They sat in respectful silence. Watching the entrance with a mixture of hope and fear, the Kreth Dominion was there too. This had taken months of quiet work. Human diplomats had reached out to the Kreth through back channels, the same way they had reached out to everyone else. They had delivered medical supplies to Kreth colonies, treated Kreth wounded, evacuated Kreth civilians. They had shown the enemy the same kindness they showed everyone. The Kreth Grand Marshal had been reluctant at first. His species had been winning the war. Why should he stop now? But the human diplomats had asked him a simple question that he could not answer. What do you win when everyone is dead? So the Kreth came to the table, not as conquerors, not as enemies, just as another group of tired beings who wanted the killing to stop. When the human delegation entered the chamber, no one laughed. Ambassador Alina Vasquez led the group. She wore simple clothes, nothing fancy, nothing political. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled back from her face. Her brown eyes swept across the chamber, taking in every face, remembering every insult from a year ago. Behind her walked a team of human diplomats, doctors and translators. They carried no weapons, no threats, no leverage. Just data pads full of proposals and a willingness to listen. High Counselor Tethfon rose from his seat. One by one, the other council members rose as well. Then, to the shock of everyone watching, the Kreth Grand Marshal also stood. Every being in the chamber bowed in their species. Gesture of respect, Ambassador Vasquez stopped in the center of the floor. She looked at Tethfon, at the Grand Marshal, at all the faces that had mocked her a year ago. Let's get to work, she said. The negotiations lasted for months. There were good days and bad days. There were arguments that lasted for hours and silences that stretched for days. Old grudges surfaced. Old wounds reopened. More than once, everything nearly fell apart. But whenever things got too heated, the human mediators would call for a break. They would bring out food from Earth, simple things like bread and cheese and hot drinks they called coffee. They would sit with both sides, eating and drinking in silence. Until the anger passed, Counselor Rethma asked about this strange custom one evening. After a particularly difficult session, Ambassador Vasquez smiled. The first real smile anyone had seen from her since this began. On Earth, we have a very old tradition, she said. When enemies sit down to eat together, they stop being enemies for a little while. They become just people, sharing a meal. It is harder to hate someone when you are breaking bread with them. She handed Rethma a piece of bread, warm and soft. "This is what peace looks like," she said. "Not grand treaties or political victories. Just people choosing to share instead of fight." Rethma ate the bread. It was good. Simple, but good. The final treaty was called the Nexus Accords. It addressed territorial disputes that had festered for decades. It established reparations that both sides agreed were fair. It created neutral zones for trade and travel. It set up joint programs to help refugees return to their homes. But most importantly, it established something new. A galactic mediation council, led by humans, that would help resolve disputes before they became wars. Any species could bring a grievance to this council and receive a fair hearing. The humans had not asked for this position. The other species had given it to them. The signing ceremony was held on the winter solstice. Date Ambassador Vasquez had suggested. She explained that this was a time when her people celebrated the return of light after darkness, the end of the longest night. The Kreth Grand Marshal signed first. His clawed hand moved carefully across the document, leaving his mark. Then High Counselor Tethfon signed for the council. One by one, representatives from every species added their signatures. When it was done, Ambassador Vasquez stood before the assembly. "1 year ago, I stood in this chamber and offered peace. I was laughed at. I was insulted. I was told to fetch refreshments for the real diplomats." The chamber was completely silent. Many delegates looked at the floor, ashamed. "I walked away that day believing I had failed, believing that peace was impossible, believing that some species simply did not want to stop fighting." She paused. "I was wrong too." She looked at Tethfon, at Rethma, at the Grand Marshal. "You were wrong to dismiss us, but I was wrong to give up on you. Peace is not something that happens because people deserve it. Peace is something we build together, even when we have every reason to walk away." She extended her hand to the Grand Marshal. He looked at it, uncertain. Ambassador Vasquez waited slowly. The Grand Marshal reached out and took her hand. His grip was careful, his claws retracted. Then Tethfon stepped forward. He placed his hand over theirs. Rethma followed. One by one, representatives from every species joined. Hands and claws and tentacles all touching in a gesture none of them fully understood, but all of them felt. "This is the beginning," Ambassador Vasquez said. "Not the end. We will disagree again. We will argue again. There will be hard days ahead. But today, we choose peace. Tomorrow, we will choose it again. And the day after that, and the day after that," she smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "That is all peace has ever been. A choice we make, again and again, until it becomes who we are." The chamber erupted in applause. Not polite diplomatic applause, but real, honest celebration. Beings who had been enemies for decades embraced. Tears fell from eyes of every color. Outside the station, the stars burned cold and bright, indifferent to the small, warm beings who had finally, after so much pain, learned to stop fighting in the months and years that followed. Historians would study the Nexus Accords. They would analyze the strategies, the compromises, the political maneuvering. They would write long papers about what made humanity's intervention successful. But those who had been there knew the truth was simpler. The Council species had approached the war as a problem to be solved. Through power, humanity had approached it as a wound to be healed through patience. They had been insulted, dismissed, and ignored. They could have walked away forever. Instead, they chose to help anyway. They saved refugees who belonged to species that had laughed at them. They treated wounded soldiers from nations that had called them children. They fed and sheltered anyone who asked, without demanding anything in return. And when the time came, when the galaxy was finally ready to listen, they returned with open hands and open hearts. That was humanity's gift to the stars. Not technology. Not military might. Not political cunning. Just the simple, stubborn belief that kindness was stronger than cruelty. Patience was stronger than pride. The galaxy would never be the same.